So they'll have enough saplings which would be more than the stars in the universe. Isn't that astounding? And if you allow if one seed is weighs a gram, okay, and if you allow those seeds to the baby plants, and when they grow, so all the descendants, if you calculate the weight, say for 60 generations, they would be more than the weight of the earth by
Wow.
by many times. So imagine, so what are the checks and balances that have contained the population, and we have such a rich biodiversity. There is something. So that's the intelligence. It's not just the defending, it's just not the growth, but how are they going to um, attract birds, and how have they learned to disperse their seeds. It's just, it's like you can read and read, and it's very, very interesting. So native plants, why the important question of why is because they're much more intelligent than us, in selecting a place where they decide this is my home, because this is where my neighbors live. I get along with these neighbors. This is where I get married. This is where I have my children. This is where I want my relatives. They have already established those niches. So there is no space on this planet. Of course, even in uh, Greenland and all, we do have very tiny plants which are like an inch. They're considered as the smallest trees, but there are plants everywhere. And if you think it's the rainforest which is the only forest, no, we have ecosystems. We have forests in deserts, we have forests around water bodies, we have native species everywhere. And to expect a Amazon forest in Delhi would be a little foolish, because we don't have that kind of a climate to support. So if you look at the species, it's very I don't know, we all, maybe many of you come from Delhi, but when I had come from Vishakhapatnam or the south, the plants I see there, I don't see in Delhi. And the plants you see in a desert, you don't see in the colder temperate places. You see pines, because they have. So that's the whole interesting part about natives, is they know best where they should grow. And since we have come so much later, and our lifespan is so less, because the species last for millions of years, and any change in them takes over a million years. So there's a little dance. So since they are the primary producers of food, okay, every being wants to consume that energy, and then that's how it's transferred to the rest. So they have, while they want to entice the beings to propagate themselves and reproduce, that's how living and non-living differentiate, is their ability to reproduce. While they wish to entice every other being to come to them to eat and disperse the seeds, yet they have to protect themselves from being eaten. And how do they do it? So they have this huge concoction of chemicals, like this wizards of broods, that they have created. All these caffeine and morphine and cyanide, all these are present in different plants in different proportions, and depending upon the soil in which they grow. Because while they would want these being other flora and fauna to be living around them, they also have to protect themselves from being eaten and die completely. So when we choose a wrong plant, or when we choose non-natives and grow in a certain place, we are not foreseeing all these things, defenses and the interactions that the natives have developed to survive in a particular place. So for them to live, we have to invest a huge amount of resources, not just in water and providing sunlight, but also chemicals that we put on these plants, because they do not have they have not developed those defenses in this new land.
Right. So we understand now what are native species. We know why they are important, why we need to think and talk about them. So, where do we, coming back to Delhi, where do we see them in Delhi? Where are we seeing them? Where do we find them? Are they being planted over here? If not, why aren't they here?
So I think if we look back at our own evolution, and we have moved away from forests, okay, where we directly depended upon the plants available in the forest for satisfying our needs, whether it's clothing, medicine, everything. So as we distanced ourselves, our knowledge of identifying the plants, because if you ingest the wrong plant, you can kill yourself, but the right plant can be your medicine, because the plant is not just a food, but it's also medicine. We have learned that by being close to the forest. But as we moved away and we became agrarian and we have started changing the landscapes, we didn't think it is important to know the trees because or know any of the plants. So that separation has led us to choose any plant that fancies us, maybe just something that looks pretty, um, not necessarily satisfy our needs, but more on our whims and fancies, something special, something that's just a conversational piece, or most importantly, something that is just easy to propagate. Okay, so that's how we have started planting natives in large numbers over all over, and that's how our invasives also have come, because they don't have anything to check their growth. So in Delhi, when you come to Delhi, we have the similar story, because we have planted here, agencies have planted here at the British times, plants like Prosopis juliflora, which has taken over the entire landscapes of the country and has created havoc. Now in Delhi, also you see Prosopis juliflora in many of the sections, well-preserved, so-called well-preserved places, even to this day. And those are the places where you see, like in the ridge area, the Central Ridge, the Sanjay one, North Ridge. So the different parts of the ridge is where you find the native flora still intact, but not in the density or in numbers you wish to see, because the Prosopis juliflora has taken over, which is an invasive. And fortunately, we are seeing them grown by DDA in some of the biodiversity parks, Aravali Biodiversity Park of IIM Gurgaon, and the Biodiversity Park in Vasant Vihar, and Yamuna Biodiversity Park. So in these biodiversity parks, we do see the government growing native species, and IIM Gurgaon is a great example of showcasing these in Delhi. I'm being specific to Delhi, but of course, if you go to Rajasthan, then Jodhpur is a beautiful landscape that has been created by Pradeep Krishan.
So we are saying that in Delhi, we find the natives only along the ridge where, and maybe in the biodiversity parks. So they are still not being commonly planted in our neighborhood parks, which are more accessible to all of us, right? Biodiversity parks are so far removed for so many of us, even though I live close to one of them. But, they are not easy to access. And similarly, I think the more accessible spaces where we really need to think about bringing in natives are, our neighborhood parks, our own homes and gardens, our streets, the street trees that we are planting. And we'll talk about that a little more. But before that, I wanted to ask you about your personal journey with natives. How did you get started on this? How did you uh, what are you doing in this? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think you would know when I started. So like I said, I tried learning about the trees. There were so many people who have held my hand to teach me about trees. There Ajay and Sajeev and Vijay and Pradeep. There's so many of them. So but when it comes to native species, it was Pradeep Krishan, who's I consider as my guru on trees. He has mentioned on one of the discussion platforms we had. I think it was in IAC. That's where you met me.
Mm-hmm.
So he, although I have been going through his book, The Trees of Delhi, which is like my Bhagavad Gita on knowing trees, but I never it was only okay ye ped dekha acha ye iska naam hai, ye ped dekha acha ye iska naam hai. That was quite a wondrous journey for me to find names for plants that I see around. But I never actually paid much attention that somewhere in the text of his book, for each plant he's mentioned which is native or not. It was just a background thing for me. But when I went on that day when you were listening to my talk on how I have reached as an activist on de-choking trees and all that. So he mentioned the importance of planting native. So it was like, it's like a little seed that was sown in my head. Oh, actually, there are natives and they are important. So that's how then, I caught on to that word and started. I approached him and I said, then how do I know which is a native? I have never seen, I don't even know, because there aren't many natives in our neighborhoods. Okay. Truly, there weren't. There are Karanj and there is Neem, then there is people, but the whole spectrum of natives, I have no clue, I've never met. So then that's when the idea of 100 trees for booklet came. And in the process, I also got to know some of the native species of Delhi.
Right. I have an interesting story about this. When I was doing my bachelor's degree, in one of my oral exams, my botany professor asked me, he said, name one native tree of Delhi. And so I went and named all the trees whose name I knew. And he said, no, 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 no. And I said, but that's all, there are no other trees. And he said, no, Palash. And I said, Palash, but I've never seen a Palash. I have never seen a Palash. How can it be native to Delhi? I know the name, but I've never, ever, ever seen it. And this was, I think, a year before Pradeep's book was published. And like you, for me also, the journey for trees started from his book. And, the first thing that I also did was, oh, I can identify all the trees. And the first time I saw Palash was a few years later when I found a grove in Nehru Park. And I was so excited. I said, Palash. They said, how can this be native? If it's native, it should be all over, right? It should be. Where is it? Why is it not here? So that was my interesting story about natives. And I didn't think much more about it until like a few years back. And for all of you, this is the book that Padma is referring to. It's available online. I will share the link so you can all get it. It's Pradeep Krishan's list of 100 most suitable trees for Delhi NCR, which Padma helped put together. And maybe for me, this is where the idea of natives started, because this is the first time I saw, something on it. So, so we do want to talk a little more about, what species we can all bring in and plant, either in our homes or, in any plantation activity that we are planning. And before we go into that, I want to share some photos that, from Padma's balcony, because I think that will really enhance our discussion. Because a lot of people will say, oh, but native plants are ugly. Oh, do they flower? Oh, can we plant them on our balconies? So as a prelude, I'm going to share some photos, and then Padma, we will talk more about them. So the first few photos that I have are these 3 tree species that are all native, and all of these photos are from Padma's terrace, and these are all growing in pots. So if anybody has any doubts about, growing natives in pots, or doubts about whether they will flower or not, they shall be put to rest over here. So these are 3 very, very beautiful native trees of the Delhi area: Chamrod, Barna, and Farash. And I had to give a special place to this one. So this is a climber that Padma introduced me to. And of course, it's my namesake. And oh, the fragrance of the flowers, it's just amazing. When it flowers, the whole place is filled with its fragrance. And then Padma gifted me a sapling at that. I have it in a small pot at home as well. And that flowered. Not so profusely, because this one, she's literally had it in the soil. It's grown so beautifully. Mine is smaller. Barlaria or Vajradanti. And yes, it's the same Vajradanti that's used in toothpaste. I had no idea that was a native species. And it's also a host plant for butterflies. And, Padma has been advocating Barlaria spread. So we plant Barlaria at a lot of places. And again, these are from her home terrace, and such a beautiful, bush of Barlaria over here. And it also houses a beautiful beehive that I saw. Uh, Two other flowering plants, Touch Me Not and Chitra. I had no idea Touch Me Not was a native plant. Of course, we read about that everywhere, but in childhood as well. Sarpagandha, and Padma tells me she has the only Sarpagandha plant in Delhi. And I was looking it up and I realized its botanical name is Rawulfia serpentina. And I realized, oh, we read in biology about it because it's medicinal, it's given for high blood pressure and other illnesses. And this is really like, I've read about it, but this is the first time I've seen a photo, even a photo of it. And I didn't even know it had such beautiful flowers. And then the photo on the right is this beautiful flowering creeper called Merua. Uh, and again, more native plants. These are all native plants of Delhi and from the ridge. They come in all shapes and sizes, and there are trees and bushes and climbers and creepers. And this is the final slide I have, I think. Gloriosa superba is a beautiful lily called glory lily. And you have this small, these white purple flowers, Comicarpus, and then falsa. So, this year I used to buy falsa from one of the falsa sellers, but there are no more falsa plants in Delhi. So the falsa comes from, from either Agra or Saharanpur or, somewhere in Gujarat. So what if we could make falsa, we could bring back falsa to Delhi. So that's my new plan. So just wanted to share, some of these beautiful, beautiful photos that Padma has shared with us as a prelude to go to our next question, and which I think we're all concerned about, which is, where do we, what are the trees and plants that we can plant? Obviously, it would be wonderful, to plant in the ground. But unfortunately, the city does not offer us that luxury. So for most of us, we have balconies and terrace gardens. So can we start by talking about some plants that are suitable for that, for balconies, terrace gardens, which can be grown in pots?
So almost all the shrubs can be grown in pots, but the important thing is that they do need sunlight. These are not plants that you can grow indoors. Okay, so that's the important thing. Of like you said, you have a Vallari in a pot, and I have a Vallari in soil, and you can see the difference of flowering. So the one in the soil will flower profusely, while the one in the pot is, because it has limited access to nutrition and for the spread of the roots, it'll flower less. But all shrubs, all climbers, including the trees, can be grown in pots. It depends on how much space you have. And but trees eventually, they should be going into the earth so that they can grow to their full glory. um, yes, everything can be grown provided that they have sufficient sunlight.
Okay. And so, what about, a lot of us now live in housing societies, and then we have basement parkings, and usually we have lawns laid over them. So there's very little soil, it's not deep soil that trees need. So what can we grow in those kind of spaces?
So I think in those you choose shrubs and climbers and not grow trees, because the trees obviously would need more space. So you can grow all the shrubs that are there of natives, as well as climbers. You can grow both of them. So
Right.
only the Vallaris, the Rivia, you have Shatavari. Shatavari is also easily available. So all of them you can grow, and the shrubs, everything that you've shown just now, the Baliria,
Mm.
Chitrak, uh, and in fact, there's one thing that I wanted to note: the touch me not. By mistake, I, instead of giving you the picture of Mimosa hamata, whose flowers look similar, I gave you a picture of flowers of touch me not. So then you can grow even a bit of your falsa, gangeti. There are three colors of Baliria which you can grow, and two of them do not have thorns. So there are many, I'm unable to recollect, but yes, all of these you can grow.
Yeah, we can compile a list of resources and share with those who are interested. That can be done later as well. And coming to my favorite question. So my question is, what which trees are good to grow for street side plantations and as avenue trees? Because what we see are a lot of these exotic non-native trees that we've brought in, but we hardly have any native trees.
Yeah, because I think what we have in Delhi, if we look around, let me just tell you: champa, Caliandra, royal palm, agave, and bougainvillea, which is the latest, and there is crown of thorns. So every year we have this new trend, a new fashion plant that comes in like a fashion trend, and it establishes itself, and they are planted in monocultures in large numbers, and none of them are native, not a single one. So they don't provide the ecological services that a native provides. For instance, one native plant can have maybe just feed 3 or 5 to 6 different varieties of fauna, but non-native, but a native can provide to around 200 plus different varieties of fauna. So when we plant on these spaces, you can think, depending upon the points that you need to bear in mind is, what is there a overhead wire, what is the width of the soil that is available, and is there a walkway beside, because you don't want something that bangs into the people's head when they walk. So based on that, then you can select a short tree, which has either wide canopy or a narrow canopy, or a tall tree. And so if these are trees that have a large trunk, because they mature, you have to plant a tree. If you plant short, that I would say is 4 to 5 years, they would all grow up to 20 feet, but some of them may even grow up to 50 feet, like the cane or kadam. So when you plant, they may be looking just a small tree, and you may not be able to envisage their adult mature size. So you have to be very, very careful while planting, based on the availability of the space when they reach the mature size. So Palash will grow up to 30 feet. So then,
Wow.
yeah. Should you choose Palash, or should you choose, if there are overhead wires which come below,
Mm,
or should you choose maybe a chamrod, which is a
mm,
little more demure and small.
mm,
So these are the discriminations, and also the color scheme. Would you
mm.
want to plant everything red, or do you want to mix a bit of white, or do you want only color, or do you also want fragrance? So now these are all personal choices, but I think one important aspect is, apart from keeping the adult size of the plant in mind, is also that um, I'm sorry, it just slipped my mind. One is the adult size in um, the color scheme, the personal choices of people, and there's some important point I just missed. Maybe it'll come to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll come to it. But Padma, that's another thing. Like somebody messaged me that, and it's something that we've spoken about, that we sometimes think of whether we want to plant a tree for a shade or for some fruit or food or flower, but can't one single tree or shrub serve all these purposes? So what do we need to do to
all,
do?
all native species, one, every plant native to that region provides all the ecological services, all of them are medicinal. All of them are medicinal. Recently, I'll just tell you a couple of examples. I went to Barsana, and then I went to a place called Vrindakund. And I was shocked to know that Euphorbia nerifolia, I forget the common name, it's like that thorny cactus.
Mm.
Uh, the gum, it
Mm.
seems it has a trace, Euphorbiaceae family has cyanide, okay? So most probably this one also has, and it seems that gum, when they uh, smear it in a rui or cotton and they put it on their teeth, it heals the tooth decay. And but if you put the same thing on a healthy tree, the healthy tooth, then it leads to problems. So it's quite interesting that I haven't, and when you go to the locals or traditional, where people are practicing traditional medicine, there's not a single plant that doesn't have medicinal properties. There's not a single plant that people who have lived locally or close to those wild spaces don't use in some way or the other. There's not a single plant which doesn't flower except the figs, which are like secret gardens where the
Mm.
flowers are inside. There are so a native in its zone provides everything. Maybe they all may not have showy plants, showy flowers, but they may not maybe having fragrance. They may be catering to the moth and not the butterfly. So you plant a native, you've taken care of everything. The maintenance, the ecological services it provides to other flora, the medicinal properties they have. Yeah, and they're very resilient, very, very resilient.
So maybe one of the things we need to do, and you mentioned that as well, really avoid monocultures for anything and bring in a variety, because I think the more variety we bring in a particular area, the more it will be able to fulfill like all these aspects that we are looking for, whether it's shade or, food, flower, fragrance. And then they would be flowering in different seasons as
Yes.
well, right? So you would have something or the other all the time. That would be really beautiful. What about, would you suggest some specific, perhaps trees, not just for avenue planting, but also in neighborhood parks? And the reason I'm asking this is because most neighborhood parks tend to already have some kind of vegetation there already, but in my experience, that may be the only space accessible for people to plant these days. Neighborhood parks, I don't, I mean, it's hard anyway, but what should we keep in mind while planting there, and what are some good trees?
I
Shrubs, you said almost
I
everything,
think
but what are
it's
some good
very
trees
important
that we can
get
bring in?
to it's very important to get the horticulture department on board, because you don't want your plants being uprooted, which happened in my case after you plant, okay? Because they want to call the shots. So it's always important to discuss with them that you have these saplings, because every year they have a plantation drive, and rubbish comes in. I have stopped in my colony for years, only Ficus benjamina being, brought in by truckloads. So I would actually stand and say, sorry, you're going back. I don't want the Ficus benjamina in this colony, because it's a number driven, and it's also because of the availability of the species. And Ficus benjamina is not only non-native, it is maintained as a shrub. So you're planting something like that should be a tree, but maintaining it as a hedge. So why don't you just grow a hedge? Okay, so it's good to discuss with them, because the natives are low in maintenance, and they do flower, they do fruit. So it's good to just discuss with them and say, look, I have these plants, so can we just plant these instead of the ones that you bring? So I think that's one of the important factors that you have to bear in mind. Maybe there is not enough place, because over the years, all these parks are completely full of trees, and people do want some empty spaces in winters to go and sit in the sun. So you could think of a good mix of climbers and shrubs now to bring in, because they're not there anyways.
Yeah.
There's always a corner you can find for native species.
Yeah, that's really true. Just 2 days back, I was in a really small park over here that I don't visit very often. And then the first thing that came to my mind was, oh, there's enough space on the edges. I can plant Vajradanti over here. Let me find out who's responsible so I can go and talk to them. I certainly agree. It's easier to find space for shrubs and, climbers and plants like Vajradanti. What about plants like Karonda, Falsa? That would be so nice. Even Mehendi, I think,
Yeah,
wow, if we could bring that.
yeah, there are many, because my heart, it's just so much, sometimes so much information is there. I can't recollect names, but there are many plants. There's Gutpore, Carganelia. But if people in the neighborhood park, you could do a mix of plants which people find useful, like you said, Karonda. You can think of henna. You can think of Kamini, which is one of the paintings. It's a beautiful
Yeah,
shrub to
such a
have. It's not
beautiful one.
native. Yeah, it's not native, but it's a nice plant to have around. So, and Jarbear is a bit thorny, and there are different colors of Balia. There's Gangeti, there's Goya Kher, which adds a bit of nice color. So there are many, you just look around.
Yeah. So maybe I can just, connect with you and compile a small list for our, for everybody who's attending this session, because I can see a lot of questions about, okay, which specific trees or shrubs or climbers can we plant? So, having talked about this, of course, the next question is, okay, now where do we get them from? Where are they available?
So that's a challenge. Yeah, that's why we have mentioned plants like mehendi, which is easily available. Of course, you can plant a curry patta. These are not native, by the way. I'm just mentioning those which are suitable, not necessarily native. Coming to natives, if you want to do specifically natives, and then there is Edible Roots Nursery, which is run by Somil Daga and Fazil. So they have this in
It's
nursery.
near a little ahead of Okla in
Kalindi
their
Kunj,
Ali
Kalindi
farm.
Kunj,
Yeah, Kalindi Kunj.
Kalindi Kunj, they have a nursery, Ali Nursery. They have a good, and then of course there is I am Gurgaon. These are the two sources I can think of. I think now BNHs with Forest Department is developing a nursery. Once they can give to public, because it's a government-run nursery, supported. Hopefully, you'll get this free of cost and should be available widely.
Yes, so in fact, I visited the Edible Roots Nursery, and they also have their list of plants up for sale on their website, and I can share that list with the participants. I am Gurgaon also has a very, very good variety of native plants. But apart from that, a lot of the native trees, I'm sure we can get at the Forest Department nurseries also, at least some of them.
Some you can get.
Yeah,
Some
for example, Kanju, I think will be available.
it
Uh,
wasn't available earlier, maybe this year. So
right.
Altas will be available, and
Hmm.
Jamun will be available,
Hmm.
and Arjun may be available. Arjun
Hmm.
is also sometimes available. So
Hmm.
there are a few trees that they make available. Even Babul is available. So you could check there, and they don't cost anything. So
Right.
yeah, so trees.
So yes, trees, and in fact, I've even found DDA nurseries. Have a very good, sometimes a very good variety of plants, and you can find some of the natives
They
there
make
as
it
well.
available to the public, that I wasn't aware, because I thought they use it for their biodiversity parks, because if they
No,
do
not
use it,
so. For example, the Chirag nursery is a DDA nursery, so that those plants are for sale,
acha,
right? So you can get plants like what did I get from there? I'm trying to think which native. I can't recall right now. But they'll have Pilkhan, they'll have Jamun, they'll have Shehtut. I got a Shehtut from them, which are
Saket
native.
Nursery also. Saket DDA Nursery, Saket City Forest, that
Yes.
has saplings, native trees available for plantation. I have taken a lot of amaltash, neem from there, lots. So that's available.
Right. And I think, in fact, even the Terry nursery at Bol Pahari, I think they also
Yes,
grow a
yes.
lot of trees. So, something that we're planning to do is just compile a list of these resources that can be readily accessible for people to look into. And we can mark which are, the native trees and species out of this one. So we can try and focus on planting those. So yeah, I think, and I saw a couple of questions about that, and it was also on my list. What about fruiting trees like jamun and shehtut and even all the figs? Because sometimes there is a great resistance from the authorities about planting them. So are they good, not good?
Course
We
we
need
have,
them, don't need
I think
them.
it's completely ridiculous because I've had the same problem with the horticulture departments, and recently there seems to be a greater acceptance of not planting fruit trees because children will climb and pluck and trouble or throw stones. I think more people are dying out of car accident and vehicle accidents than anything, like this. The people, some ridiculous reason that they will climb the tree and fall down and break their legs. I said, we have to have fruit trees. I mean, where is a connect? It
Right.
is very so important to have, not just for birds, but for humans themselves. It's very,
Yeah.
very important, and I hope that the horticulture departments bring them back because there is other plants like lasora, which I have. It's very easy to propagate lasora, and those should come back. Bear, lasora.
Hmm. And I always tell them, I say, but you must have climbed trees as a child, and now you don't want kids to climb trees. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, but
We're just
nobody
breaking that connection with nature. How else are we going to build it?
my activist is coming out. So the thing is, you don't stop your child from riding a bicycle. You don't stop the children from driving vehicles. They may be, they're more likely to die out of an accident than climbing a tree. So
Right.
we must get back our fruit trees.
No, not just. I think the argument that I've heard is, oh, but they will throw stones and the car will get damaged. And I said, well, let the car get damaged. And I've actually never seen anybody throw stones.
High
But
up and coming and falling on a glass which is on the side. It can possibly any. We can think of.
and in fact, urban foraging is actually a very common activity that's overlooked. So, in fact, the jamuns have just finished fruiting. The summer jam, the Ashadya jamun, the Bhadaiya jamun will start. And everywhere where I went, I saw laborers, gardeners picking up the jamun. We are selling that at premium rates. But
And they can't
imagine,
afford to buy.
yes. So
They can't,
everywhere, yes, they are foraging, right? And this is what urban foraging is
and it's a
about.
treasure for them. And our earlier generations have planted trees for people to enjoy, for birds to enjoy free. They never had any expectations of just anyway. So we must plant not just for birds and but for people like poor people.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure to see them plucking and eating, or just picking up from the ground.
Yeah, for everyone. Like fortunately, I have a drumstick tree at home, and I cannot tell you it since last year. Even people walking on the street, they come and they say कि हम थोड़ा सहजन ले सकते हैं, and I always give it. And I've shared so much Sajan since last year. I mean, just distributed it, and it's like the tree that keeps on giving. The
Sanjana
fruits, the
in the
flowers, the
market, Vallari, the Sanjana in the market, one Sanjana is something like 10 rupees. And
yeah.
certain communities like South and Bengalis, they thrive on it. And for poor people to be able to afford two Sanjana is like 20 rupees.
Yeah.
Giving it free.
So
Why don't
it's,
they have one
I
Sanjana?
just feel like every house should have a sage tree, It's so
Anything.
easy to grow and it's so nutritious. I mean, it supposedly has a very, very high calcium content and a number of micronutrients and so easy to grow. So I'm all for sage. So, finally, tell us something about your native tree projects. I know you worked on some, you are currently working on others. You mentioned Barsana. And, there's this project that you did in Chandigarh where you did walks for the police community over there. And you've also been involved in greening like all the police stations. That's
Yes.
like so wonderful. So I have a couple of photos from that and I want to share them and we would love to hear you talk about that. And that's Padma in her walk avatar. And when she's I don't know, sharing or directing someone to do plant right. And I love this photo because it's like so many people, like grown-ups, you're telling them, I think, about a small leaf or some texture of a leaf, I don't know, and everybody is like looking at it, uh, just trying to find the spot. And this final one, you've also helped them in making a composting pit. I think that's another thing that's so important in our urban areas. We don't do enough of it. So, would you like to tell us about your Chandigarh project?
So even before the Chandigarh, I have had the pleasure of sharing the knowledge I'm so passionate about, which has also been a healing experience for me, is to share the beauty of plants. And I got this opportunity with World Wildlife Fund, Delhi. So that has given me a great window to share the joy. So that's what I took to Chandigarh Police. I have worked with them on greening the police stations. So the new thing that I have brought there is selecting the right plants. So I made a list of the species that should be planted in the police stations, and I would go check regularly, because the success of a plantation totally depends upon your monitoring. It's so important, because most of the plantation drives are one day events, then they're completely forgotten. So that's what I wanted to avoid here. So I every month I would go and actually calculate each and every sapling in every police station, and it's been a huge pleasure because the support that I have got by the Chandigarh police. We also did the composting, and I wanted to just share the joy. So we had a lot of walks, nature walks, and it's amazing. Most of them have never looked so closely at a plant. Acha, the names, and that gave me a great joy to share with these. They were very, see, police are do thankless job. They are very stressed out. They're quite overloaded, but that's how their job is. And we usually don't see police in as humans. We see them as these people with authority. But when I interacted with them, it was quite an emotional thing to bring them so close to nature in the mornings, because their lives are filled with so much stress, and it would be stress free. We would then have games around nature, and it went on for quite many. And then we also had a photo exhibition based on what they saw during these walks. So the photographers who actually cover crime scenes, you can only imagine what they see daily. And looking at flowers, and one of them was transformed. He was literally in tears. He said, you are a godsend, because you're making me see things that I've never seen all my life. And I just get goose pimples, because to be able to touch their lives, it's been very satisfying. And Samita, one of my friends, has helped me in getting these composting things done. So it's been a very fulfilling experience because of the support I got. And I had to take a back seat now because of COVID, but I'm hoping one of these days I go and finish even this year plantation. And the that's about the Chandigarh police.
That's so wonderful. And I think you brought an important point here, which is, the joy that plants bring and the impact on our mental and emotional well-being that plants have. I mean, I cannot live in a gray city. Like, I wouldn't survive. And so I am fighting for plants just because I want to live in a place where there are enough plants for me to survive. And this next one, these are some pictures from Barsana, where your current project is going on. So I think this is a picture of the landscape or the hill where you are doing, planting. And these are a couple of pictures of the nursery, I think, that you've set up there. And this is all the seed sorting that's going on, and growing all the saplings that are going to go up on that hill. So tell us something more about this one.
So for many years, I have always wanted to do first, of course, follow the footsteps of. Uh, I do not have an academic or a institutional or a authoritative background where I'm in a certain. So all my work is something anybody can do, provided they have the passion and persistent, like, we have to do this. So anyone can do what I'm doing. The thing is, it has been my dream, first to restore and rewild a space like Vijay does and Pradeep Krishan does, but there are limitations in this field for a woman, especially. And if you're a homemaker, then you have your challenges. So, Barsana has been a dream to reach, because that's a space that I have always wanted to work for, Braj. And I'm very, very happy. We are volunteering, me, Somal, Mohit Saini, and Radha Madhav. We are doing it as a service to Braj, and we are going to, there's this hill called Ratnagiri. I don't know how much or how fast we're able to achieve, because we are doing it out of our pockets. So it's like we are doing it very slow. So hopefully one day we'll be able to scale it up. And it's 150 acres. So we are just now doing in a very small section of the hill, and we are trying to restore it. It's a very happy space to be, and we're getting tremendous support from Mataji Gaushala, and amidst that Gaushala is the Ratnagiri Hill.
Wow. So I can't wait to see the results of that in a few years. So, a lot of, we'll quickly go through some of the questions, I think. Thank you for sharing so much with us today. I'm sure we've learned a lot from this. I just want to remind everyone that, we will be sharing some resources later. We'll put them together. So you can follow us on our social media handles, which are here, or for updates on that. Or you can write to us on our email, wikidsbc01@gmail.com, or you can even drop your email in the chat box here. So that we'll be sure to send you the updates by email. And, I'm just going to go through the questions in the chat box. Hold on, I'm just scrolling up and seeing.
Let me make it easy for you, Vallari. Most of the questions are around what fruit trees. So if there's if there's something that we have on the more easily growable fruit trees of Delhi, and then there is about the sources. So both of these, I know we're going to be sending them information anyways
Right.
post this after we compile it. But yeah, just an overview on fruit trees.
I think the one easy tree that you can grow in Delhi, which is native, is definitely Lasora. It's easily, you can propagate it easily, and I think you make achar out of it in the north, because in south we are not familiar with Lasora at all. Then then there is Shammi has, those who are from Rajasthan, the khejri, you make your kher sangri, so you can, it's not really a fruit, but yes, in a plant botany, it is a fruit. That is another one you can grow, but it's a bit slow growing. And you can grow your kajur, again, it's slow growing, but it's a native. And jhar bear, which is a shrub, you can grow that even in a pot. But most of these are slow growing, but Lasora grows pretty fast. And you can grow gundi, but gundi is not really a fruit that you would eat.
Also, there's the native variety of sedgen. But in fact, I say any sedgen.
Sedgen, the native variety is kadwa.
Yeah, so for sedgen, I'm a little bit partial. So I'm like, whichever one we eat. What about jamun?
Jamun is, but jamun have large, you're saying even if people have large spaces, then of course you can grow jamun. You can grow bear, the large bear, which is not native. Yes, you can grow that. And again, shetud, which is again not native, but you can grow shetud. If you're looking at fast growing, shetud is fast growing. It grows pretty fast. I think it's best we sit down and make a proper list, because offhand I'm not able to.
Yeah, we'll do that. And I've got a question. Where can I get valorous creeper?
It's not the available anywhere, but you can come and take a cutting from my roof, or Valerie, you take the responsibility
Yeah.
taking plants out of the cutting from my climber on the terrace, and yeah, and you make it available to the people.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some cuttings from her roof. I mean, the plant that I grew in the pot was from a cutting, and that did really well. It will take time to
Yeah, but
grow because
people
we'll put the
can
cuttings
also
now.
grow juhi. You can also grow clematis, which is easily available. You can grow shatavari, which is beautifully fragrant, very easy. It grows very fast. It's medicinal and is perfectly suitable for Delhi climate.
Yes,
These are the ones you can grow. And I'm
right.
talking easy availability, definitely juhi and clematis. Then again, these are not native to Delhi, but they are suitable. Shatavari is native.
Hmm. And Devlina auntie points out correctly, and as you also said, Padma, that we can grow trees as small plants, but they really need to be put into the soil ground for them to grow really well, of course.
Yeah, later, maybe in 2-3 years, yes.
Right. Somebody's asked, can these native plants travel to other places like Pune?
You must check what is the native plant list there. They would have,
Yeah.
because Pune, as you know, is a different climate altogether. Some of them may be common because some are indigenous, so they might be, say, indigenous to Pune as well as Delhi. So we could check out what are common to both Pune and Delhi, maybe, and then you could take those from here.
Right. Then a question about shrubs and climbers for our terraces. As we said, we will share some resources. And somebody's pointed out, I found a lot of Alstonia in many parks. So, what do we have to say about that?
Like I said, the choice of plants is by authorities has been basically something that grows fast and easy to maintain. That means nothing eats it. Uh, like I, nothing eats it means it's no good actually. So, um, so no, Palestinian definitely no for Delhi.
What about Amalthas and Karanj?
Definitely, you can grow amalthas. It's native. Karanj is not native, but it is suitable to Delhi. You can grow.
Devlina auntie is asking again, can you also talk about the relationship between trees and birds?
Okay, it's a very very in. I mean, should I leave that to you, Valerie? Because you know,
Yeah, that's what I study. So, but that's a very, I mean,
you can share, and if some
the
point you miss out, I will add.
wow. You know, as Padma has rightly pointed out, and as we've been talking, the one factor is when we bring in natives, they support a lot of species, and that's because the fruits, the flowers, or even the insects that pollinate these flowers, they are food for birds. So, if you want to find birds or if you want to encourage birds, you need to provide them some things that they need. So they need food, they need habitat, they need spaces for nesting. So what I have actually found is, for example, there are specific trees in which you will find nesting birds. So amaltas, I often find crows nests on it. I also find menas and magpie robins nesting in the cavities in the amaltas. And you will find, when there are older neem trees, you'll often find spotted owlets on it because that's their perfect habitat. And with samals, you will find so many birds that come and feed on it. In fact, every year I go to Padma's terrace because she has a beautiful samal tree coming over there, and I just spend hours under it, watching all the birds. So you need to plant the right trees and plants that provide the food and the habitat for all types of life, like not just birds, because it's an interconnected web of life. And when you plant the right trees, everything will come and they all support each other. So then you don't need to do anything extra. But yes, at the same time, there are some non-native species that are naturalized, for example, in the city, that also do pretty well and that also provide food and habitat for birds. um, So maybe a mix is, what I kind of think about when you are really thinking about birds. It's okay to bring in some of these non-natives, but really, really focus on the natives and figure out what works very well for that area and habitat.
So when the bird babies are small, they predominantly thrive on insects. The mother gets little worms, caterpillars to feed the babies. So they have to be plants which whose chemical defenses are broken by caterpillar, because a caterpillar has developed the enzymes to digest the plant leaves, and it eats them, and the bird eats the caterpillar and picks up the caterpillar and feeds the babies, and the babies are voracious feeders. Okay, they eat like hundreds of worms, because that's the protein they need to grow really fast. So it's not just the fruit that the bird is eating, as an adult, but it is the insects which the bird is feeding to its own babies to feed, to help them live. So it's a lot of interconnectedness there.
Yeah, that's
We're
true.
just scratching the surface now.
We need an entire separate session for this that we shall do later. Somebody, Mr. Shivakumar, has pointed out that most pathways and roadsides in Delhi are being covered with tiles and cemented, which not only allows the earth to breathe and rain to seep. So these patches of walkways with earth can be easily used to grow native shrubs and plants, even if not trees. That's,
Yeah. Yes.
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 And Nirdesh Singh says we need Barna and Roheda on Delhi streets just for their flowering.
Barna may be easily available soon, because it's an easy plant to grow and it propagates easily through the fruit. Roheda is another matter altogether. It's also slow growing. It's a desert plant. So let's start with Barna first.
Yeah.
I
And
think Barna is there in Ali Nursery.
hmm. Yeah, Barna and Roheda both are there
Barna
in
is
Ali.
available even in I am Gurgaon Nursery. So just grab a Barna quickly.
Yeah. And one more way to get the plants, everybody's been asking how do we get the plants for things like Barna, like if you find a tree, collect the seeds, grow the plant yourself.
Yes,
That is also really, really enjoyable.
yes.
There are many
Them to
seeds that
others.
we can find and grow plants. Gunjan is asking, is there any other native climbers? So we've talked about Shatavari and Vallari,
There's
and
Pilwan, which is has beautiful leaves, and it grows very fast, and it has a lot of fruits, not edible for us. Maybe they're used in some drinks, because we have not still explored the spectrum of use of these native fruits yet. But I'm sure there is a use. So Pilwan and Shatavari and Raivia, and what's the other one I have? Valeris.
right. And Merua, that's the other one,
Merwa is
we talked about.
flowering,
Yeah,
and it's also
such.
quite, it's not all evergreen all the time, but peel one is evergreen. I find it
Right.
always, with its leaves.
T points out, he's quoting you, you plant a native and you've taken care of everything. So that's beautifully put. Devlina is again asking, is it not possible to put pressure on the horticulture agencies to plant native trees?
I think now they should, with the forest department taking the lead in Delhi, to give space and resources, because we have been requesting them for more than 5-6 years. I've been writing letters, and it's nice to see that it has finally culminated with BNHS and them partnering. So with the forest department having first, the thing is the plants have to be available to be planted in large numbers. So hopefully in future, all these departments source natives one way or the other, or grow them themselves. And that's the only way they will plant. If those plants are not widely available, they're not going to plant. There has to
Right.
be pressure built on them to grow a nursery of native species first, so that they cannot say they'll not source or buy these by putting tenders from other nurseries elsewhere in the country and bring them and plant, that are completely useless in Delhi.
Yeah, Vish is asking what combination of native tree species should be planted in an area to have rich biodiversity. I think
You
we've
answered yourself.
covered it.
You answered yourself. Just put a good a mix of everything.
Right.
Put your natives, put your suitable trees, all of that. You can put a few exotics also, as long as you're not putting an invasive.
We have questions about, which fruit trees to plant in my residence in Greater Noida, 4 to 5 fruit trees. Um, and we've talked about La Soda and other trees, and, we'll share these lists. Parijat and Aparajita, are these native?
Parijat does well here in Delhi. You can definitely plant. Aparajita is a climber. It's a native. It grows pretty well here.
And what about Shisham?
Not a native, but it's suitable.
Right. Can the natives survive if we plant them now in the poor rainfall?
If you water them, yes, because the rains are coming. So till the rains happen, you need to water them every day.
A lot of people are asking that if you do a walk, they would like to join in.
Oh, I'll be,
They loved hearing about your experience and about your work.
thank you.
Is it
I'll,
possible?
I'll be soon doing walks with World Wildlife Fund, maybe in September, October. We just want this whole COVID thing to die down. And yes, I am really looking forward for my walks, because that's where I get to connect with people like you, and spread this love for trees. It's my opportunity to do that.
Then questions about guava and mango.
Not native, but who won't want to eat a guava and a mango? Do go plant in yeah, please plant them, but they need intensive care. So if you can give that care.
Right. And I think this is an important question. So this is probably going to be the last question we take today. If we know which trees to grow, but we cannot cut invasive trees due to stringent laws, then how should we go about it? And this is also something I've been asked that, or accused of, that in the garb of natives, you clear up entire areas.
I think this is about managing land judiciously and ethically. Okay, if since Prosopis juliflora has permeated every space, and it doesn't allow native species to thrive or grow, because it's an invasive. That's the quality of an invasive, where there are no checks and balances to contain its population. Then how do you, because it's shady and it releases chemicals, then how do you bring back your native species? So you need to plan it well, and maybe do sections, so uh, you know take them away in a small section and alternately plant, then you move to another section. So by the time these natives are growing, instead of removing the whole area, maybe you have to do it section by section. I think that's the
Yeah.
better way to do it.
So basically, it's about, we do remove the invasive species, but let's not leave the space bare. Let's go back and plant it there, right? I think that's
Maybe,
the most important thing.
what you could do is you could take away the canopy of the juliflora. You're not removing the tree. I mean, just a thought. You're lopping the juliflora. You're planting a native species, because then its shade is not damaging the growth of the native species. Once the native species grows to a certain height, then you grow it. Then you remove it. We have to do this trial and error in batches, in small sections, and see. Then we should definitely not wipe out before the trees have reached a certain height.
So final couple of questions. Is Nirgundi native? And I'll answer that yes. Yellow oleander, because government nurseries are very fond of them.
I'm fed up of this yellow oleander and champas and bougainvilleas, because they're easily available, they're easy to propagate, and they're definitely not native. So everything has its place. So there is a place, maybe there is a use for oleander in restoring. You need to figure out, because somebody, people Baba, I was having a chat with him. He says they do very well when the earth is degraded, but we are not dealing with degraded, and maybe there are native species which do pretty well, and even degraded, we need to figure out. But yes, please don't do monocultures. Even if you want to choose yellow oleander, just limit it where it's really necessary.
And then what is your opinion about Miyawaki forests?
So Miyawaki forest is from another country, and they have they grow things in densely. But like I said, the evolution of native species shows that they have the intelligence to thrive in a space for millions of years. Okay, so if you're growing densely in one space, it's quite evident that there is a fight for nutrients, fight for water. So there is a chance. I haven't seen Miyawaki in our country, say 40 years down the line or 50 years down the line. We need to observe how it works. But in a space like Delhi, where we have very little rainfall, then I don't know how concentrated growth of trees is going to work. But because if you see in a natural landscape, uh, in these spaces, the canopy and the trees are quite widespread. They're not focused because there is less water. So even you have less water, how can 20 trees grow where only one tree has the resources to live? Only has one tree has the resources for water. There's only enough water for one tree. So if you put 20 trees, will they have enough water? I don't know. Because nature has taught those trees to spread them wide. So if you're doing it something that the nature hasn't done, so I don't know how our intelligence is going to prove for that space, because we
Right.
have very limited intelligence to study the whole cycle.
Well, thank you so much, Padma. Thank you for being with us, patiently answering all our queries. I
Like
mean,
more questions, I do share my email ID so I can answer them. I would love to know what kind of questions people have. So, uh, so you can share my email ID and I will respond to them. My name.
yes, we'll do that. And a lot of people have also shared their email IDs, and we've made a note of it. So that we can share all these resources. And I think the next job for Padma, you and me, is to sit together and put this list of resources together, because now everybody is asking. And I'm very happy, people are asking for Vallari. So now I have to figure out where to get Vallari from.
So I would
um,
like to see unmute everyone, so at least I can see them and say bye. Video, not the mute, the video, so I can at least see everybody's.
right. Yes, you can please switch on your videos. That's up to them. So thank you so much. We've made a note of all your email IDs. We'll get in touch. We'll also share through our social media channels, and stay in touch, because we have other talks like this coming up. In the month of July, we'll have Somil, who runs the Edible Routes Nursery, and Sohail, and even Bhuvan, with very, very interesting aspects of native plants to talk about and to get you started on this native plant journey. Please do share your feedback with us. Let us know if there are specific other, sessions or questions you would want us to answer. I know there were a few that we didn't get to. I'll look them up in the chat box later, and if I can find resources for them, we'll definitely share those with you.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Jayati, we can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
I was just thanking the both of you and thanking all the participants and saying this is just the beginning, and we will be in touch with all of you. You can be in touch with us. The email address is wiki dot, don't forget the dot dsbc01@gmail.com. Just write in, and we will be more than there's a dot. We missed the dot. That's our mistake. There's a dot between the wiki and the dsbc01. So yeah, just write in with your questions and the challenges you face while doing your plantations, and we'll get our experts to answer those. So thank you so much. Thank you both of you. Thank you, Padma,
Thanks,
for
I think
taking
she's
time out on a
already
Saturday.
left. She's
Gone.
already gone.
Yeah. Okay, great. So have a good Saturday, all of you. Bye. Bye. Okay.